Shalom, brothers and sisters. This week's teaching on Parashat Chukat and Balak is rich in prophetic depth and spiritual revelation. Therefore, the message will be preached in two parts to allow a deeper understanding and proper meditation on the scriptures. Part 1, Parashat Chukat, that is the wilderness, purification, and trusting God beyond understanding. Part 2 will be Parashat Balak. It means spiritual warfare, covenant protection, and curses turned into blessings. And these two connected portions reveal how God both refines His people internally and defends them externally through His covenant mercy. We invite everyone to come prayerfully and with open hearts to receive the fullness of this timely word. Parashat Chukat and Balak. The wilderness, the warfare, and the covenant of God. And the Torah portions for Chukat is Numbers 19 verse 1 to 22 verse 1. And in Balak it is Numbers chapter 22 verse 2 to 25 verse 9. This week we study two very prophetic and Torah portions together. That is Parashat Chukat and Parashat Balak. At first glance, these portions appear unrelated. One speaks about purification, wilderness, struggles, and leadership failure. The other speaks about curses, prophecy, and spiritual warfare. But when we study them through Hebraic eyes, we discover one continuous message. That is, God is refining His people internally while defending them externally. In Chukat, Israel struggles from within. They are complaining. There is fear, death, rebellion, weakness. And in Balak, Israel faces attacks from outside and thereby have fearful notions, is a fearful nation, spiritual curses, witchcraft, seduction, and compromise. This is exactly the journey of every believer today. Sometimes our greatest battles are internal, where we experience discouragement, doubts, impatience, and emotional dryness. And sometimes the battles are external, where we have opposition, spiritual attacks, false accusation, temptations, and unseen warfare. Yet through both portions, God reveals, I am still with my covenant people. Part 1, the mystery of Chukat, which is faith beyond understanding. In Numbers 19, we see the Red Heifer or Heifer. Parashat Chukat begins with one of the greatest mysteries in Torah, the law of Red Heifer. The ashes of Red Heifer purified those defiled by death. What is fascinating is this: the unclean becomes clean, but the priest performing the ritual becomes temporarily unclean. This is divine paradox. The Hebrew word kok means a decree beyond human logic. And this teaches us that God's ways cannot always be understood intellectually. In Isaiah chapter 55 verse 8, it says, "My thoughts are not your thoughts." And modern believers often want God to explain everything. Why this suffering, they say? Why delay? Why unanswered prayers? Why wilderness? But covenant faith means trusting God even without full understanding. And the messianic connection is that the red heifer prophetically points to Messiah. Just as the heifer was without blemish, sacrificed outside the camp, bringing cleansing from death, so did Yeshua suffer outside Jerusalem to cleanse humanity from sin and death. Hebrews chapter 13 verse 12 says, Yeshua suffered outside the gate. That death represents the consequences of sin. The ashes represent purification and restoration. Only God can turn death into cleansing. Part 2. The death of Miriam. When wells dry up, immediately after Miriam dies, the water disappears. And the rabbinic tradition connects Miriam with the supernatural well that followed Israel. This reveals a spiritual principle. Sometimes God allows familiar streams to dry up, and many believers experience seasons where prayer feels dry, worship feels empty, revelation seems distant. Why? Because God does not want us dependent on methods, personalities, or past experiences. He wants dependence upon Him alone. Moses strikes the rock. God told Moses, "Speak to the rock," but Moses struck it. Why was this so serious? Earlier in Exodus, striking the rock symbolized Messiah being struck once. Now Moses was instructed to speak. Messiah would not be crucified repeatedly. This is not merely anger. It was distortion of prophetic picture. And the spiritual lessons we get here is that many believers still strike the rock, operating in frustration, ministering from anger, leading through control instead of intimacy. God desires mature authority. The wilderness often exposes what is hidden in the heart. Part 3. The fiery serpents. Looking up to live. Israel again complained, "Why have you brought us here?" Then fiery serpents entered the camp. The Hebrew word seraphim relates to burning ones. The poison represents sin, rebellion, bitterness, and unbelief. But God instructs Moses, lift up a bronze serpent, and whoever looks upon it lived. The prophetic revelation we get here is that Yeshua himself connected this story to his crucifixion. In John chapter 3, verse 14. As Moses was lifted up, as lifted up the serpent in the wilderness, so must the Son of Man be lifted up. The bronze serpent symbolized judgment placed upon sin. The people were healed by looking upwards in faith. This teaches us that deliverance comes not through human strength, but through fixing our eyes upon God's redemption. Part 4, the spiritual transition from wilderness to inheritance. At the end of Chukat, Israel defeats Sihon, the king of Amorites, Og, king of Bashan, and something changes spiritually here. The generation of slavery is dying. The new generation is rising. This transition is important before entering promise. Wilderness thinking must die. Fear must die. Complaining must die. Many believers want promises without transformation. But God prepares people before promotion. As we come to the close of part 1 of Parashat Chukat, we leave Israel standing at the powerful moment of transition in the wilderness journey. Through the mystery of Red Heifer, the striking of the rock, the fiery serpents, and the battle against hostile kings, we have seen that God was not only leading his people physically, but also refining them spiritually. Chukat teaches us that even in seasons of confusion, discipline, dryness, and testings, the covenant faithfulness of God remains steadfast. Yet the journey is not over. In part 2, as we enter Parashat Balak, the focus will shift from Israel's internal struggle to the unseen spiritual warfare surrounding them, while Israel's journey forward unaware, a hidden battle begins in the realm of curses, prophecy, and spiritual opposition. We will discover how God turns curses into blessings, exposes the danger of compromise, and reveals his divine protection over his people. In Yeshua HaMashiach's name. This session is to be continued. Amen.